What's going on, guys? It's Frito here. I've put a lot more playtime into Stadium, and while I still do think it's the future of the franchise, I also have found a lot more bugbears, problems, things that I hope that they will improve over time, and since they have released the roadmap, we know exactly what they're focusing on. A week and a half ago was the conclusion of the first week of the mode, and they reported precisely a bagajillion hours played, whatever that means. We'll see how transparent they are on this in the future. We know they want this one to work. And now, many weeks later, new content being added to it in the new hero at the mid-season coming up soon, and content drops for each season thereafter. We'll track the health of the mode over time, and my assessment is that it's healthy enough. I'm not sure it's setting the world on fire with overwhelming praise, but it's just yet another way to actually play Overwatch. Not quite the PvE game that could have broke the internet, but certainly a standalone pillar that's distinctly separate from the more esports-minded competitive game of the main game. I've been tracking a lot of feedback on the internet about Stadium, as well as developing my own thoughts over time, kind of falling in love and out of love with the mode at different points. And one of the most common bits of feedback I've seen is asking the devs, who is this for? The mode seems to be sending mixed messages, and it's taken me this long to finalize my thoughts about it to give the best answer possible. First, let me talk about the problems. The matchmaking's unclear, and maybe it'll work better over time, but for now, it seems as bad as quick play, yet the mode itself is incredibly competitive. The way that you blind pick and lock in heroes ahead of time is somewhat casual in nature, and in order to compete and win the game, you're kind of gonna get blown out if you don't really master the different builds in play. In many respects, this could be a completely separate competitive experience, full stop. Yet it also is supposed to be a casual experience for you to do wacky things in and make explosions happen. All of that sounds contradictory. Until one day, it clicked with me. The main Overwatch competitive game really incentivizes swapping your hero, a thing you can't do in Stadium. Locking you in your hero, you effectively are cosplaying a one-trick whether you like it or not. And I actually think your enjoyment of the mode will dramatically change based on how much you want to one-trick that given hero. Stadium's gonna feel much more fun when they add your favorite heroes to it, which is why I think the support player numbers are so high, because in our community, they are the subcategory of players that have swapped the least in Overwatch 2. So for the rest of us that are used to swapping our heroes in the competitive game, what we need to do is find the heroes that we want to invest in, because Stadium games can take a long time. 7 rounds of Stadium, including all the armory time in between, could be like 30 odd minutes. And whereas in Overwatch, you can kind of have ADD respawn simulator and come out on a different hero kit entirely from death to death in a short game, in Stadium, you're really forced to go back to the drawing board and figure your build out to stand a chance. I think that'll be a lot more fun for everybody once the hero roster really starts to gain some momentum and start catching up to the main game. Now, you might think that sounds like a bad thing, but ultimately Stadium is endgame Overwatch. Because I'll give you an example for me. Part of the reason I realized my love for Stadium was falling off a bit is that my favorite heroes in Overwatch 2, Winston, Ramatra, Junkrat, and Pharah, none of which are in the game now. I swap a lot in competitive Overwatch, but a few of these I would like to dedicate to more than I can. Or I'll give you another problem. Overwatch is a competitive game, there's a bit of an SR limitation, where for me personally, the highest I've ever got on damage in the history of the game is by mostly maining Pharah these last several seasons with the new rework. But whereas I can play a good number of heroes at Diamond in the damage category and feel comfortable, once I get to Masters, like keep in mind, Masters 3 is top 500. So all of a sudden, I need my Junkrat and Pharah, which are like my best heroes, to compete up against the best aimers in the matchmaking. And it need not be this extreme. Like, we can translate this to any player who peaks out on a few heroes they love, but then just based on the competitive nature of the game, you're going to have to min-max to your best degree to compete to win, and that's not necessarily that fun. Also, a thing I don't like is I don't necessarily want to be a detriment being a Pharah one-trick for my team, but realistically, I've only got a handful of DPS picks that I would want to play in a lobby with top 500 players in it. I'm not all of a sudden going to develop the speed and reaction time to play a good Tracer. It's not going to happen. There's just no point. And this is something that always made me defend Mercy players, because like if there wasn't Mercy in the game, a lot of these players wouldn't be playing Overwatch at all. But also, while I would say, and I do, try to learn other heroes, I know what it's like to have a small subset that just speak to you for whatever reason that maybe you'd even love to one trick, but in the competitive environment, it's a bit of a detriment. Well, Stadium is the place where you can take your Junkrats of the world, and rather than forcing some gimmick in a highly competitive environment where your teammates want you to play whatever meta strat they believe in, well, Stadium is for you to love those hero mechanics, and everyone is kind of individually trying to get their build to work, as opposed to the main game, which often is about team comp building and teamwork. More severe in 6v6, but it still exists in 5v5 in a large degree. So basically, the best way to fall in love with Stadium is to find the hero or heroes that you could love to main the same way that a Mercy main plays their hero. You should go into Stadium knowing you love a hero's mechanics, and you're going to tinker with them like a mad scientist. Stadium is the environment and playground to do that in a somewhat competitive setting, which also fulfills the desire that many players have asked about over the years to have a comp casual mode, or like quick play plus in between ranked and quick play. Or maybe a ranked minus. I don't know. The way the ranking reward system in Stadium is more my speed. Like, the competition matters, but it rewards grind a little bit more. It's more about achievement and expression and a little bit less about meta slavery. Okay, so that's some advanced thoughts on who Stadium is even for. It's for end game Overwatch fans to either be an outlet or an outright alternative to the sweaty tryhard esport game that the main game is. This is good because I can track so many other games like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, where their alternate modes outshined their main modes. And as Stadium gains momentum, I can see that potentially happening. Either that's going to make it more friendly for the typical live service multiplayer game player that exists today that are hopping from game to game, or for aging players like myself who don't want to keep up with the next Korean 14-year-old phenom running circles around us on the ladder. Like, I get it. You're better. Okay. A thing they also reported was that there was indeed a higher lever rate in Stadium in the first week or so of the game. And I think a lot of these harsh edges of how different Stadium is in comparison to the main game drove some people away. I haven't seen so many levers myself in these last weeks, and I would assume that it would have went down now, where people that are never going to play the mode again aren't rage quitting out. If you do not have the build knowledge in this game, you will get blown out. Simple as. Like, I'd say the two things I notice that highly affect the game, the 5v5 fundamentals of Overwatch 2 is step one, especially the tank interactions. There's a very formulaic way that a diva needs to play in order to beat a Zarya, which oddly enough, despite the win rates globally of diva being the lowest, she's my most dominant tank, and it's not even close, partially because I know how to outplay a Zarya. The short answer is never frontline. But even still, those hero mechanics of rock, paper, scissors that are built into Overwatch and are a bit more severe for my tastes, like in Marvel Rivals, a major benefit in my opinion is that hero mechanics, they kind of counter each other, but slowly. The impact of a counter pick mechanic isn't as severe, whereas in Overwatch, it's like diva blocks all your damage, or this hero one-shots you. And being locked into a single hero in a MOBA game, one downside of that, I'd say with these matchups, is that then there's certain items that are just required to be bought every time against that matchup. I cannot imagine a world where you would ever not get the beam reduction when matrixing against beam heroes when you're playing diva. That's a bit of a problem. And at least for me, it has been a bit prohibitive for my enjoyment of the mode due to how punishing some of the strategy actually is. That edge is shaved down a bit because you get 100% refund on your sold items, which I think is something they might want to reconsider. I think that's the more casual friendly option for now, and certainly required when there's blind pick, because you don't know what the enemy's picking before your team locks in. But I think especially once hero draft comes a few seasons down the line, there'll be a bit of a benefit if you can't just so easily wholesale tech swap. Being able to almost entirely build swap from round to round, at least with your items, obviously your powers, you can't swap up, but the items are so transformative to your stats and the extra interactions, be it like mobility or extra abilities oftentimes, the items are very, very impactful. And in kind of a weird way, it really incentivizes players that understand the full scope of the armory, because I feel like I've been exploiting this because there's a lot of round 7s that I win. Be it full out reverse sweeps. I wish I actually made a spreadsheet of my games because I swear I have a pretty intense round 7 win rate, mainly because I know the full extent of what to expect in the armory and what matters. So once you get to that final end stage build point, I feel like I'm often outbuilding the enemy. But part of that is because I can full sail swap from round to really all in on whatever strat I think is most important. Now, the benefit of that is we get to round 7 instead of getting blown out or snowballed. But the downside of that is there's not really consequences for your decisions. That's okay in the learning process as we're getting up to speed with this mode, but try to think that if you got reduced currency for selling an item, tech swapping would just be slowed down a bit. So it would still be important, but you just couldn't as easily full send counter build the enemy. Because that makes round to round gameplay a bit obnoxious, because you never know, okay, all of a sudden they've got the item that reveals you when they headshot you, or now they're doing super high damage that I didn't expect, or with a full refund, I can choose to go for Flying Reinhardt only on the maps I think it's good. Like, there's not really consequences to go back and forth. And while the devs seem to like almost say it with a smile that, well, this mode is about counter building instead of counter swapping, I'm not so sure I like it as much. Like, I like it if the hero I'm playing is my favorite hero. But again, back to the square one issue. I don't necessarily have a favorite hero that's in the mode yet. And I can just see why there were so many levers, basically, is my point. I think being struck with how competitive this mode actually is when you think it's a mode about expressing yourself and your individuality. I mean, no, a little bit. To the extent it works, in the right matchup, yeah, but in the wrong matchup, you just get absolutely clowned. I think this gets exacerbated a bit with the tank matchups being mismatched when their mechanics counter each other. I basically gave up trying to play and learn Queen just on the off chance that I go against a Zarya that gets extended and more bubbles constantly. While I know how to outplay it in theory, I have no desire to play that matchup ever. Which is why, at the very least, I think the picking draft that is scheduled to come out will help this mode, because then in a draft style format, the mode doesn't have to just incentivize the one hero you love so much that you'll be willing to fight it tooth and nail with them for possibly 30 minutes of a 7-round game. Then you can actually see the matchup as it develops, particularly if you're one of the later picks. And maybe that's when you get to pull out a hero that you think, similar like in the main game, maybe isn't your best, but is ideally suited in the matchup as it's laid out. Other little annoyances with the mode, I'd say there's way too many heal bot supports. I guess that's just what we're expecting to be the fun thing nowadays, because that's how Marvel Rivals is designed. Stadium's got Juno, Moira, Mercy, seemingly in every single game. I prefer burst value from supports, but that's just me. I prefer to play with and against Kiri and Ana far more, rather than the supports that run in circles healing and are really hard to lock down. You can add Lucio probably to that list as well. That's going to get a pretty big shakeup next season, though, with Zenyatta being added, who I think fits our description of the type of character people would play a lot more in the main game due to how fun he is, if he wasn't so easily countered. So being locked into him in Stadium is going to be interesting for this. Maybe we'll see the tank player population dip once that comes, especially with Junkrat being added as well. And other comps I'm not so happy to see on my team would be Genji Reaper as a DPS line. It can work, but mainly I think because there just isn't a dive tank. The one that exists is Rhine, but you have to build into him down the line. Double flanker might look better once Winston gets added next season, but it's also just because Soldier is so easy. Cassidy has a lot of easy value. I think Ashe is moderately easy with extremely high upside. So those heroes, they just stand in the formation and output tons of value on several builds. Genji and Reaper are just limited in their viable playstyles. Not to say they aren't good, but when you have two of them on your team, that's when I've seen the team struggle the most. Now, while this video had a bit of hemming and hawing about the issues that are annoying me about Stadium, now that the honeymoon phase of the mode is wore off a bit, I also just think that it out and out is the future of the game. Because it's so personalized, it's just simply more inviting to a casual player to invest time into than the main game, which also is, by the way, doing well. Part of the reason why I'm not as hyped for Stadium is that I can play my favorite heroes easier in the main game now that we have hero bans. Conversation for a different day, though. To have a good time on my favorite heroes, particularly Ram, Winston, and Pharah, I can permaban Zen, because I hate playing against Discord. Nothing to do with the meta. Don't care if he's better or not. I just want to win myself. Stadium kind of goes the other way, where it's less about winning or losing and more just about enjoying your given hero. And if we look to what they're adding in the roadmap, some things that stand out to me is each season there's going to be new all-star rewards. Now, all-stars are rank, the second highest one, which in theory, just about any player could get to, seeing as that it's more of a time-based thing than an MMR thing, because you don't lose very much. When you do lose, you gain a good amount to an insane amount, depending on the actual MMR, I think, of the lobby. I don't really know how it works. Nobody does, I don't think. But what we do know is that it isn't an SR system. So what they want you to do with this mode is to grind it, which I think becomes more inviting to a bigger percentage of the players as they continue to add heroes. I know a lot of players love Zen. I certainly am going to sign up to do so next season with Junkrat, without a doubt. Winston's the season after that. I could see Sojourn being very, very fun in this mode, just because she's essentially the ideal design DPS for 5v5. So I would imagine she plays good in 5v5 Stadium. I like Brig a lot, but I am not waiting in support queues. But they're going to let you save and share your builds, more example builds. And then as these go out over time, they're certainly going to be changing the powers, adding new ones. The armor is going to be getting mix-ups as well, as they keep adding things. Custom games is coming out next season, allowing for stadium tournaments, potentially. An entirely new casual game mode, Payload Race, which I think is a little bit interesting that Stadium is allowed to have all of the casual but fun modes that the main game can't really keep. I always really liked Clash. I thought it was really, really fun. And I just sort of ignored all of the competitive problems people talked about. So I actually am happy to play it in Stadium. And I think Payload Race might be a little similar, but I think looking at this roadmap, on one hand, it looks like they're doing everything they should. On the other hand, these are many seasons away. Seasons are about 2 months long. And it surely will be interesting to see season 19, as that actually is the heavy hitter update. I've mostly talked about draft mode. That's the one I'm concerned about because it solves like gameplay problems. But on top of that, they've got consumables and they say item system upgrades. So what I think that means is consumables in MOBA games, there tends to be a few different ways you can use them. I don't know if it's going to be just pre-combat in the armory phase, like you upgrade just for that round, or if it's going to be mid-combat. The reason why I'm hesitant to know is because it would take an extra key binding, but there's ways they could figure that out with like a scroll wheel or something. A typical consumable in a MOBA game is teleport, where you take yourself safely back to your home base, but it also could be impactful abilities that you only get to use once with the consumable. And maybe they're expensive even. Like imagine you had an ultimate on a consumable. Not to say this is a good idea. This might be a terrible idea. But like you could go all in with your currency to hopefully win that round with an item, in theory. Or there could just be little ones where the easy answer, I think, is some of the basic items that are in the shop now, like get a little bit extra speed coming out of spawn. I don't think I'll ever pick that item, ever. For a little bit of currency as a consumable, that makes sense. So I think they'll do like a pass at the item shop in general, just improve it overall. So by the time that we are maybe fed up with these annoyances that I'm kind of tapped into early, as someone who has dedicated a lot of time into this mode so far, hopefully by then, with that suite of upgrades in 6 months, Stadium will get that shot in the arm that really upgrades the systems of it. I've got some other Stadium content planned coming up. I kind of don't know how to make content for this, just based on how weird the audience for it is and how deep the game is. We could go over the depth of strategy of the game for 6 hours, but I don't know if anybody would be actually interested in watching that level of depth on a casual competitive mode. That's where it feels weird to me as a content creator, how to handle this. So I want to make some videos on some build paths that worked out for me, how I flexed my build knowledge to win games, and then maybe some generalized tips that I've learned along the way grinding the mode. I'd like to know your review of Stadium so far. What heroes do you like to play? What kind of content you would like to see get made? And as well, if you listened to the video this far, that means you probably liked it. So like the video and click subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when I post new videos. That's been it for me. I've been Frito. I'll see you guys next time.